program today, so I'll go ahead and introduce Dr. Ryan Niemiec, colleague and friend. He is our Chief Science and Education Officer here at VIA, and so excited to learn more from you today about the dual role of character strengths. So I'll go ahead and pass it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, dear Sarah. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. This is a exciting time to be able to bring forth this work and this science, and to be able to think about different practices for applying this into our own life, into our life as practitioners, as carers for our planet, for the people on it, for our families, for one another. And our topic here is what I'm calling the dual role of character strengths. And that term comes from looking at the science of character strengths over the last 15 to 20 years. And we hit the over 1,000 mark last year in terms of studies on the VIA survey and the VIA classification. So, massive amount of peer review science that's come in on the importance and the benefits of this work. And so, if we look at those 1,000 studies, I try to boil it down. Part of my job is to simplify things and translate the science to practice. So if I translate that, I would translate it to two big buckets. The character strengths are beneficial for well-being, and we're going to unpack that a little bit today, and all the meanings of well-being and the subcategories of well-being. But then they're also helpful for adversity and all the sub buckets there, meaning dealing with difficulties and dealing with life suffering. And I can see a lot of suffering in myself these days, um, and really any day, just as I'm sure each person here can see their own suffering. And sometimes we forget, it's really easy to forget that we actually have 24 resources within us. We all know we have some coping strategies and we have this or we have this that we like. Maybe some of us are yoga practitioners. Some of us like to challenge our thinking. Some of us like to exercise. We all have a few at least, strategies that we use. But my argument here today, and what I hope everybody walks away with, is that they have 24 capacities that they can turn to help with adversity and struggles. And so that's kind of an overarching theme and takeaway that I'm hoping. And so the way that we plan for today's session is to share on some research and translating that into practical strategies. And we'll take questions at the end, and if not, you're welcome to email me questions that are kind of left unanswered. You see my email on the screen here. And we're going to take some time for small group work as well. So we'll have one small group activity where you can discuss some of what I present and learn from one another as well. And we can do maybe a little bit of a crowdsourcing at the end, and a large group chat, and where we can learn from everybody. So we'll do the best we can to apply some nice adult learning methodologies within this approach. So I do just want to make sure catch everybody up. Some of you here are certified in uh, in character strengths in one of VIA's certifications, mindfulness-based strengths practice or workplaces at their best. Others of you are not certified, but you've been applying this kind of work for a very long time. And then there's others of you who are quite new. Maybe you took the VIA survey recently and are intrigued and curious about your strength results. And then others have kind of dabbled. You've heard about this work and you've kind of dabbled a little bit. You leave it for 12 months and you kind of come back, and then you leave it and you come back. So you're kind of learning bits and pieces of things. So we have the whole gamut of learners here, which is really wonderful. So I want to make sure we're all on the same page. So what we're talking about here when we say character strengths, we're talking about the VIA classification here, these universal qualities, sort of uncovered and packaged by scientists that are found across philosophies, across the world religions, and in the most remote areas on the planet, cutting across cultures, and these 24 strengths here. And we think of this as a common language for communicating about what's best in people, for understanding what's best in us as human beings. whether we're particularly strong in these strengths or not, they're there as capacities within us. So we begin to see that, and we see that other people have it, and our family members have it, and our kids have it. So there's all this potential that we could be talking about and reinforcing and building up. So that's where this common language, we can all get on the same page here. Um, so that's how we think of this. Now, back, it's been, gosh, I guess 20 years, a little bit over 20 years when the VIA survey first launched, really 25 years. Um, and it's been quite popular. It's reached over 35 million people. It is now, and some of you most of you wouldn't know this, I don't think, because we just kind of discovered this last year as well, that it's the number one test on the planet in terms of strengths or positivity, any kind of well-being kind of thing like that. Um, so in terms of when I say number one, in terms of how many people take it per year. Not the total overall, but say something like Myers-Briggs, Clifton Strengths Finder have more because they've been around. Myers-Briggs has been around, I think, half a century longer. So they've had a pretty good head start. And then I think the Clifton Strengths has been ahead maybe by, they've been around maybe 20 years sooner, 10, 15, 20 years sooner. So VIA has kind of risen up in that way. And why has it risen up? Well, it's free. So it's easy to access for anybody, and that's why teachers and professors recommend it, and managers recommend it to everybody in their company, and so on. And it's scientific, and it's peer reviewed, unlike all the others. So in other words, anybody can use it in their study. Any student, any scholar, any professional can use it and study it. And if you go to any database online, you'll see over 1,000 studies on this work, whereas you won't find that about the others because the others, it's more proprietary work. So those are some reasons why. I think another reason why it's been so popular is I think of it as reaching the trifecta of reach, or trifecta of people in big categories. So it's very appealing and beneficial and rising in popularity for scientists, for practitioners, and for the general public. And of course, I won't go into data on all of those right now, but scientists and researchers are using it more and more. Practitioners, whether you're a social worker, whether you're a counselor, whether you're a coach, whether you're a manager, whether you're a teacher, anybody helping others with strengths, more and more people are using it in that way. And then the general consumer, your next door neighbor that maybe hasn't thought much about psychological stuff or strength stuff, it's becoming more popular there too. So that might be some of the reason why VIA has been kind of rising and doing well over the decades. And quite accessible, 45 plus languages, probably reaching every language on the call here, I would imagine, or most. Um, and then one other sort of primer, just to make sure everybody's on the same page, is the definition of character strengths. Now, any article you read on character strengths, not everybody will say the exact same definition. You'll hear slightly different variations, but essentially, this is a definition we compiled from looking at the science that had been mounting over the years. That character strengths are these positive parts of your personality traits. And they do three things really. They reflect who you are, so your core identity. They lead to positive outcomes, as we'll talk more about, and then contribute to the collective good. So this becomes sort of a three-pronged or three-dimensional definition for this VIA classification of character strengths and the qualities, the 24 qualities that are within it. Now, some scientists have also found some other really important common attributes among these 24 strengths. In recent science by Alexander Stallman and his colleagues in Switzerland found that fulfilling is a very important component in thinking about character strengths. That these 24 character strengths are they lead to a more full life for people. They're very fulfilling in and of themselves, individually and of course collectively, to tap into. Another really important descriptor or quality emerging from recent science about these character strengths is that they don't diminish others. We say do not diminish. So they do not, that when we're using our strength in a balanced way, we're using our character strengths in a balanced way, it's more about uplifting others and bringing benefit to ourselves and the world in a good way, and not bringing people down. So those are some other kind of qualities we can think of with the strengths. But I want to move squarely into our topic of today, which is this dual role that I was mentioning earlier, the two huge buckets of well-being and adversity. So I'm going to have a slide on well-being and a slide on adversity. And these are pretty high level, I would say, summaries. So, you could certainly drill down further into these. And of course, you can read the articles on any of these. So just still pretty big picture. But I wanted to break down well-being into many different ways of thinking about it. Some of these kind of are different ways than some of us that are in the field of positive psychology might think about them. I try to be pretty broad here. Um, so character strengths are associated with well-being in many different ways. So physical health and social health and spiritual health, caring for our environment. There's new science that I've been privileged to be part of around how character strengths are connected to nature connection. And we have a couple interventions that emerged there. Character strengths are connected to mindfulness and various levels of peace. So inner peace, relationship peace, group peace, and even community peace and more broadly. And we've been writing about that quite extensively, including a new book called Peace Psychology and Character Strengths. And then self-care, all the pillars of health, the pillars of physical health, character strengths are strongly connected with, and so on. Now, not all of these are causal studies. We don't, even though we have 1,000 studies, we don't have as many intervention studies as we would like. So we're always pushing for scientists to do more intervention studies, randomized double-blind placebo-controlled trials to study, hey, there's been some strong correlations between character strengths and healthy self-care. Can we cause healthy self-care if people tap into strengths A, B, and C, or they tap into their signature strengths? And so we need more studies like that. We have several uncausal components, but this slide should be read as strong connections and not causal. Now, and I have the citations there. I just limited to one. For many of these domains, I could keep going and list several citations. I just chose one for each one for simplicity. And I'll do the same now for let me just first say, you can get more details on these. And I just showed this is the VIA banner that I'm flying up here, the website, viacharacter.org. And you would just go to the researchers tab in the upper right. And then you can see, don't go there now, but you can see all these studies in a little bit greater descriptions. And then many of them, the majority you can find online. So now let's take a look at adversity, the other part of our dual role with character strengths. So adversity has many faces. You can think of it quite broadly. You can think of it fairly narrowly. You can think of it on an individual level. You can think of it on a social level. Here's a layout in one particular article. I'll show you the citation later. I think I mapped up 20 adversity areas, and I think there's about 15 on the slide here. So from depression and anxiety to grief to less alcohol use to managing chronic pain, something as serious as paranoia to traumatic brain injuries, and then kind of bigger issues with homelessness. And character strengths have been studied among people with natural disasters and in war and terrorism zones, and find that there's a buffering effect to character strengths in those situations. So a whole lot of benefit around adversity. So let me say, and then I'll just point this out again. You go to the VIA banner and then VIA website, viacharacter.org, and then you go to the researchers tab to learn more after the webinar. One way to summarize all of this, that's kind of maybe a fun way that you can remember, you'll hear the phrase moving from what's wrong to what's strong, right? So that's well-being. If we're going to move from what's wrong to what's strong in life, and we all need that shift more. Probably all of us do. 99.9% of us do, and I'm including myself. To be able to move from our struggles and our suffering and getting lost in all of it, to be able to find and discover what's strong in us and what's strong in other people, and to grow from that and to move forward. That's the well-being side. But what about the adversity side of that phrase? So then I would convert it to using what's strong to deal with what's wrong. right? So we get to play with the words in that way, using what's strong to do with what's wrong. And that's what character strengths are doing with this adversity stuff. People are tapping into their strengths to grow from traumas, to grow from suffering internally, to grow from struggles and conflicts in their life. It's not a cure-all, it's not a panacea, but it's an important piece that's been missing in people's coping armamentarium. It's been a missing ingredient in how we can move forward and become more resilient. So I'm going to pack on both of these out even further now with different studies. And then start to point out some practical strategies. So, on well-being, a popular theory in positive psychology is PERMA, P-E-R-M-A, for these five domains, and that these five domains make up a lot of well-being, five different buckets. PERMA has been nicely and beautifully expanded to what's called PERMA 9. And I didn't include the other four here, but we actually have a character strength study published on PERMA 9 by Nicole Casali and Tommaso Ferracco from Italy. So that's one that I could send you if you were curious about it, or you could find it online. But I'm just going to show you PERMA 5, or the original PERMA theory for now. Because this also was a great study, because what this study did is it looked at people's self-report on PERMA and character strengths and other report. So they got informant reports on the subjects. And so here are the results of that particular, summarizing informant report and self-report, and finding that these were the strongest relationships in terms of character strengths and these different buckets of PERMA. And so you can see some things that are probably predictable that any of us would guess, like love and kindness, of course, under relationships, that's going to be strong connections. But had you thought of teamwork? Would you have put that in the top three if you're looking at the 24 strengths? Probably most people probably wouldn't have. But teamwork, we can think of a good relationship as being kind of two people that see themselves as equals and that are working together and collaborating. Kind of doing, self-sacrificing at times and working with one another and finding ways to do that teamwork dance interpersonally. Uh, if you look at the meaning in life category, you can see some things that you might guess. You might guess the transcendence category of character strengths. So that's strengths like spirituality, appreciation of beauty, and gratitude. Those probably would be expected. Transcendence is quite related to meaning in life in that way. But it might be interesting for you to add into your kind of mindset and thinking about meaning in life. Oh, well, maybe I should be giving attention to social intelligence as maybe part of how I can create more meaning in my life. Maybe perspective, that bigger picture, that makes a lot of sense. Seeing the bigger picture of the world and my place in the world and finding meaning in that way. And then, of course, curiosity. To me, that's sort of a default strength for many things. And I know that I find a lot of meaning, and especially in my adolescence and young adulthood, I discovered meaning. I was going to say daily. I don't remember if it was daily, but very, very regularly by asking questions, by exploring, by not always accepting the status quo of institutions and challenging institutions and beliefs, that were maybe shared. And I lived in a pretty healthy family. It's not like I had a lot of corrupt beliefs put in my head, but I still was able to challenge things and think about things in different ways. Um, and that curiosity fostered a whole lot of meaning that lives on today, decades later, within me. So that's an important strength. So you might think of where you fit in terms of meaning in life and your character strengths. But to make it even more practical, let me ask you this particular question of what is your path? So if you would like to build more meaning, I'm sorry, more well-being in your life, a couple immediate ways to consider. One is to consider what's your best bucket here out of these five? What's your strongest bucket? And what character strengths are you using to keep that going? How can you keep maintaining that bucket strongly? So for some of us, there's a percentage here that will really relate more to pleasure and hedonia rather than eudaimonia. If I say that another way, people relate more to positive emotions than, say, engagement or meaning. And so for those that maybe relate more to positive emotions and kind of getting, trying to pursue lots of excitement and positive feelings in life and savoring this and that and doing a little bit of thrill seeking and just, going to concerts and music and there's lots and lots of positive emotions and that's the priority. Um, that's great. Pay attention to how are you doing that? What character strengths are maintaining that for you? Is your pathway of creating all those great positive emotions? Is it zest? Is it hope and humor, like on the screen? Or is it other strengths? When I say other strengths, the first thing I would invite you to consider is your highest strengths, which we call signature strengths. So when you take the VIA survey, what comes up in your top 5 or 7 strengths? So maybe one of those or 2 of those or 7 of those are helping you to really create more positive emotions. So really what I'm asking us to do is to be more mindful, to bring more consciousness to our strengths in that bucket because it's very easy to be mindless and to be on autopilot with this. Like we're just doing stuff. We're just going to concerts and trying to have this friend group and that friend group, and we're going to do this and that. And, we're not really paying attention to how we're doing it and the character strengths that are maintaining it. And then things might fall apart at some point with some of those things, and we didn't know how we maintained it in the first place. So here we reinforce and we buffer and we strengthen by understanding how is the good happening in our life, right? And so I'm not just talking about positive emotions. Any of these buckets, look at the best one and how are you doing with it? How are you doing that? How are you maintaining that? So that's one way to make this slide practical and this science practical. A second way is probably the one that you've already thought of, which is the default part of our mind to maybe go with what we're lower in or potentially weaker in. So what's the bucket you need to grow in the most in your mind? And then how might you uh, uh, turn to character strengths to help with that? So some people might have an aha looking at this slide and say, "Oh, yeah, I'm not really tapping much into meaning in my life these days. That's important, and I want to do that. And I'm coming to the age of, 62 or whatever the person's age is, and I've not prioritized meaning in my life, and I've not set goals around that, and I'd like to do that now." Okay, so what will I do? Well, the whole point of this theory is that the character strengths are the pathways. If you look at the original writing on this by Marty Seligman, who operationalized this 5-part theory, or these 5 buckets, literally it says, and it's the character strengths that are the pathways to the 5. That's often missed when people talk about this stuff. So we would then ask ourselves, okay, meaning in life is the bucket I want to grow in. Which character strength? And we could start with what's on the screen. If I take that off there, maybe these could be good tips and strategies. So it is as a starting point. But equally important might be to turn to your highest strengths. We have other research that's talked about the value and shown the value of signature strengths for meaning in life. So you could turn to your highest character strengths. Um, so those are a couple different pathways into making this well-being stuff practical, at least on this slide. Um, Now I want to share with you, kind of looking more holistically at well-being in terms of the domains of your life, and I'm just putting 3 domains right here of your physical health, mental health, and social health. So I did a study not too long ago with 12,000 people, asking them questions, people around the world, across the continents, and asked them when they're struggling mentally, and I gave some examples of that, what character strengths are most helpful? And they had the list of 24 with definitions that they could pick from. When you're suffering physically and you're feeling ill, or maybe you have a chronic illness and it's really bothering you, getting you down, um, uh, and you're just suffering a lot physically, what character strengths are most helpful to turn to? And I asked socially, when you're feeling lonely, how many of us are feeling lonely or more lonely in recent years? Very, very common for people. So when you're feeling lonely, when you're feeling isolated, socially disconnected from people, away from your friends for too long, not feeling you have friends or many friends or deep friends, what character strengths are most helpful? And so here's what people said to each of those questions. So this is again intentionally quite holistic. Um, and interestingly, if you look at what's on the slide so far, there's more to come, but what's on right now, they're all different strengths, which I was rather happy about that came about. Sometimes as researchers, we don't know what's going to happen. That's good science. We can predict and we try to make hypotheses about what's going to happen, what we're going to find, but you don't know. And so you're happy when you get kind of interesting results or good results. So I was happy that it was quite diversified in terms of very different strengths that people reported that they leaned into for each of those domains when they're experiencing adversity, and then how they create some well-being from that. But there was one common in the top four for each of these, and it was the strength of love. So love is in the top four for each of them. Otherwise, we have some other pathways. So it's kind of fascinating here if you look at this and think about it more deeply, that when we are suffering physically, that we know I used to work a lot with people with chronic pain and with medical conditions, and I've worked in medical settings, and it is a delicate balance when helping people with chronic pain and chronic illnesses, because one of the most important things, it's not a panacea, it's not the only thing, but is to move and to get active. But yet it's a paradox because it's very difficult to do when you have chronic pain or an illness. So you have to do it like sort of gently and find the balance, but still push oneself to be able to do it. And that's what's hard. So how do you push yourself? You turn to your inner resources. I mean, it's one way. So you turn to, and again, this is other people's words, not mine. I mean, I'm now reinforcing it, but perseverance. You turn to self-regulation and having some self-control. You turn to the sense of hope that I can get, 1% better by next week. I can feel better, so I can find hope by connecting with other people still, and so on. Right? So you can unpack each of these different domains in very interesting ways. And so then I would invite each of us to kind of create your own holistic set of strategies. I was going to say remedy. It's maybe too strong a word, but maybe it's the right word for some people. Your own holistic set of strategies here with character strengths. And maybe some of you were in that study since there was so many people in the study, and but probably I'm going to say most of you probably weren't. So you can ask yourselves the questions that those people hopefully are now applying in their life, which is, what do you use to help to get better mentally, physically, socially? Make your top four list for each of those. Make your top two list and memorize them. And then ask yourselves, how do I tap into these? Because each person's way of tapping into perseverance is going to be different, or kindness is going to be different. Some of you, it might be to, for kindness as an example. So for some of you, it might be to do self-kindness meditations, sometimes called self-compassion meditations, loving kindness meditations, listening to them regularly. For the others of you, it's going to be to do more kind acts, to do very small kind acts for other people on social media, next door neighbor, in phone calls, and do one a day, and that's going to help you. And for others, the kindness is going to be something completely different. Maybe it's just journaling and exploring kindness and really trying to expand your mind of kindness, right? Your mind of curiosity, your mind of creativity. So everybody's different here. So find your examples and map that out in your holistic set of pathways here. So also a little bit more on well-being. As you can see, some of these are kind of about well-being and adversity at the same time, like the last slide. This is the same way, really. So in that same study, I asked people to consider, general psychology, which comes down in a trite way, thinking, feeling, and behaving. So I kind of I talked about had people think about how are character strengths helpful for your well-being and mental health, and what's most useful in terms of your thinking, feeling, and behaving, and connecting character strengths to that domain. And for each area, thoughts, feelings, and actions, I had something that was more around just dealing with the thought, the feeling, or the action, and then something around doing something new and different. As you can see, in there, the word new is in one of the items for thought, and one of the choices for emotion, one of the choices for behavior. And then if this was too confusing, it didn't make sense, or people didn't think there was any way that they would best connect character strengths to it, then they could hit none of the above. And so about 1 in 10 people said none of the above. Um, but this was a surprise for me, actually. I did not expect the emotional domain, the feeling domain, to come up number one and number two, making up, what is that, over 40%, 42% or so of people relating to using character strengths to work with their feelings. Maybe it's to manage their feelings in a new way. Maybe it's to try to understand their feelings, to face their feelings, to use bravery to better understand why they're feeling angry, to using their curiosity to unpack their nervousness and their worry and their anxiety, using love and spirituality and gratitude to support them when they're feeling sad. So these are the things that came about in that particular way. So perhaps attending to the feelings part of you with your character strengths is an important part of your well-being boost. Now, let me share briefly on character strengths for adversity. Um, I put together a three-part model for thinking about stress or a situation that you're going to be getting into that's difficult. It's an adverse situation. Maybe it's to make a difficult phone call. Maybe it's to have a difficult meeting at your child's school. Maybe it's to interact with a coworker on a project that you don't want to interact with. Maybe it's to care for somebody that you just it's just very, very difficult to care for. Um, and the list goes on and on. Name your adversity, name your struggle. And here's a way that can be helpful in terms of bringing character strengths to help. So it's three words that you need to remember: prime, pause, reflect. Okay. And we map it out in time orientation fashion. So before the stressor, during the stressor, after the stressor. So you're about to go into that difficult meeting. So then to take the time to do what we call resource priming, which is a research supported strategy of working with strengths. And resource priming means to prime strengths before the experience. Now, the studies tend to focus on this in the helping context, where it's the therapist, in one study that I'm thinking of, the therapist priming themselves to think about their client's strengths. And that helps in the client interaction. Uh, but then I also apply that to yourself. So if you're about to go into that difficult situation, prime your character strengths beforehand. So much research just on priming in general, because our brain and mind, it's so complicated. We don't think of this stuff. Again, we're not mindful of this kind of stuff. So what character strengths could you use before you have that meeting? Maybe you're going to prime yourself with self-regulation and breathing deeply and finding a sense of balance. Maybe you're going to prime yourself with promoting fairness at the meeting. Maybe you're going to prime yourself with humor and just take things a little bit lighter. And maybe you're going to smile more at the meeting because you're priming yourself to do that. You're thinking about humor and ways you're going to use humor before the meeting actually starts. So you're going to smile more. Maybe you're going to tell a joke that you otherwise would have forgotten to tell. You're going to laugh more and just going to be more kind of like loose with your body, right? So we prime. Pause. So during the stressor, we find moments to pause. And in mindfulness-based strengths practice programs, we call this the mindful pause, which we introduced in session 6. So you're getting to hear it right now. But where the mindful pause means to first take 2 or 3 slow breaths, and then to ask yourself, which of my character strengths might I use right now? And you can do that while you're at the meeting. So you're sitting there at this difficult meeting and you're kind of looking around at the people. And right now, my eyes are open. I'm looking at people, smiling, and I'm taking a slow, deep breath. Second slow, deep breath as I look. And then after I've done that, I've kind of centered myself a little bit more. Then I ask myself, which of my character strengths might I use right now, right here in the meeting? So it can then launch forward gratitude or teamwork or leadership or creativity or uh, hope or whatever it might be. And we could trust an inner wisdom within us to allow that to emerge. And then the third, and probably least common to do, is to conclude with after it's over. So the meeting's over, you go back to your room, you go back to your home, you go back to your car, whatever, and you reflect on what went well in that meeting. Because the brain will want to say, oh, that didn't go well. You didn't say this. You should have said this. Why didn't this happen? Gosh, it went so awful. Fine. Let your mind do what it needs to do, but also just make sure you ask what went well. What character strengths did I use in that meeting? And you'll find something. You'll have to find something, and that's it's something that you can build on. Okay. Um, so really, I want to bring this question back to you all, and to say, hey, as a point, you have these 24 potentialities in you, 24 capacities. Have you made the most of your well-being potential? And for stress and adversity, have you considered all of your inner resources? And if I can answer for myself and for everybody here, 100% of us, the answer is no to both. Because we haven't. We've not sat there and unpacked every one of these 24 coping strategies, resources, tools, and thought about each one in 200 different ways to boost our well-being and what adversity, right? Anybody that's done that, please correct me. But 100% of us haven't done that. So there's always a lot more, not a little bit more, but a lot more we can do. We can only do so much, so do a little bit at a time, but there's always more we can do with our well-being with these resources. There's always more we can do with managing our stress. And that's really what VIA has been trying to teach. We just maybe didn't call it this way, but that's what we've taught for 15 years, in different ways, in reports and books and courses and certifications and so on, is many different ways to boost well-being with these strengths and many ways to manage adversity. Now, all of this does actually relate to mindfulness-based strengths practice, which I know some of you are certified, some of you have taken MBSP. I certainly want to encourage anybody to consider it as an important set of tools or toolbox. Mindfulness-based strengths practice emerged in 2013. It is now sort of a rare program in the field of positive psychology that's empirically validated. It's not just evidence-based, like there's research to support things, but it's actually empirically validated as a program, meaning that it's had many, many studies on MBSP itself and found to be consistently beneficial in many studies. So there's very few programs that we can point to that we can give such strong support to scientifically. The first positive-oriented mindfulness program, even though it also is very much about handling adversity, and has been put head to head in 4 studies against the most popular mindfulness program on the planet, mindfulness-based stress reduction, and it has surpassed that program in various outcomes. It's either equal to or surpasses mindfulness-based stress reduction in those studies. It's growing in popularity around the world. And there is a little handout on this that we can share with you afterward. This is kind of a one-page fact sheet on MBSP if you're interested, or maybe you know somebody that's interested in maybe taking the program, participating in it. I do want to offer this unique opportunity that VIA is just now offering, so you're the first to see it, is that for the next 100 people, you get this pretty steep discount on MBSP. We've offered it. We're offering it 4 times this year. There's only 2 left. One that just started this week, but it's not too late, with my wonderful colleague Roger from the United Kingdom. So you can listen to the recording and jump right in next week if the May dates work for you. Especially it's framed for people in Europe in terms of the timing. So that might get people's in Europe's attention and in any time zones similar to Europe. And then I'll be doing it in September. So that's another option. And we'll circle back next year. We did also, by the way, open up a second certification cohort that will start in October. So if those that want to go even further, you already know this, and you want to get certified in MBSP, you can join the October cohort. So that's good news for a few people. Now, MBSP, map it right here to the adversity well-being stuff. We've been fascinated to see that 90% of people report a positive effect on one of their relationships, which is quite extraordinary. And they say that MBSP caused that effect in a positive effect in one of their relationships. We've heard very dramatic things, people being separated for 15 years, coming together. And then we've heard everyday relationship stuff in terms of just the people that are in our house that we're connecting more with. And then also quite extraordinary is that 72% say that MBSP caused them to better manage, cure, or the or is important, or overcome a life adversity of some kind. So that's very exciting, and it kind of hits that dual role of character strengths quite nicely. And I know we don't have a lot of time, but I want to give us at least 5 or 6 minutes to just touch base with one another briefly in breakout rooms. And so if you take a look at these particular questions, there's one on adversity and there's one on well-being. And so I would like to invite you to consider that in the breakouts. All right. Okay. Everybody is back. Thank you. So many great discussions going on. Let's turn to the chat briefly, everybody. And it would be great to hear from everybody in terms of one key insight that you got in the group. And if you didn't join the group, that's okay. Please offer one insight anyway from one of these two items. And you can kind of say well-being and then like the insight, the strength that you're using, how you're boosting well-being, or you could say adversity, and then, what strength you're using for a particular stressor. So we'd love to hear from you. And this is kind of a way that we can track a lot of insights. And it might be that if there's a collection of unique insights that all of you come up with, I mean, we have a lot of people here that are participating, that could then inform future studies. So we're not kind of doing this chat like just for our own health or just for our own fun. I mean, we're doing it. Actually, it could become something scientifically important. But we also know, at the very least, it's a way for all of us to learn from one another a little bit more because you'll read some of these things in the chat and get some more ideas and more thoughts. But I personally save the chat logs in terms of around these kinds of questions. So let's just give a minute or so for that, and then we'll turn it to Sarah to kind of close us off. And if there's a time to answer a quick question or two, that's great too. Well, I did see one quick question, Sarah, that I'll just answer. One person was asking, what's the difference between MBSP and MBSP certification? So MBSP is where that discount applies, and that's the 8-week program that you experience. It's for the individual. And that's the empirically validated program that links mindfulness and character strengths together. And it's kind of people think of it as their mindfulness and strengths toolbox, is what that amounts to. And then there's people that want to go further and lead MBSP with others. So lead it with coachees, lead it with clients, lead it in organizations, lead it in schools. And so they choose to get certified. Now, you don't have to be certified to lead it, but many people want to feel that extra competence, confidence, comfort, all the deep knowledge that happens, be part of the community of certification people. So there's all sorts of benefits, and there's special invitations that people that are certified get in terms of science webinar updates and other community things. So then people can pay for that certification if they wish. And that involves a couple courses and one-on-one meetings with a master trainer and a project and leading MBSP and some other things. So they're quite different. MBSP is for everybody, and then the certification is for practitioners that want to go further. So feel free to ask me or Sarah or others more on any of that, and we're happy to try to help support that. So I won't read what's in the chat. Usually I do that as a pattern, but I'll let that be. Let everybody read it on their leisure, and I'll look forward to reading it after we conclude. And for now, I turn it over to you, Sarah. I'll move the slide over here for any kinds of questions or more on this.
Yeah, okay. I feel honestly so inspired reading the chat. There's so much good stuff happening in there, and hopefully we can share a few comments in our follow-up email with everyone. We received like 20 plus questions, and so I just want to acknowledge thank you so much for your interest and your excitement around this topic, and we'll try to answer a few of those in our follow-up email as well. Um, Other than that, you can look out for the recording from us so you can dig back into these insights and sit with them a little bit longer. And then, like Ryan said, you can reach out to him, Ryan at viacharacter.org, or happy to answer any questions you have as well. My name is Sarah. So Sarah W at viacharacter.org. But again, you'll get an email from us and that'll open the door if you have any other questions or want to chat or connect. We will be there. And yeah, as Ryan said, we have a promo going on right now for mindfulness based strengths practice, the 8-week course. I actually recognize a few people in this group who were in my MBSP course. So it's really exciting to be able to see people a couple of years later and see what they're saying in the chat and how they're using mindfulness and character strengths. So, anywho, yeah, first 100 registrants after this course, you get a deal for $350, the 8-week program. Anyways, this has been lovely. Ryan, thank you so much. Every time we meet, I feel like I walk away with a new little nugget of wisdom, or maybe like 10 new nuggets of wisdom. So thank you so much.